Identify what your why is from the very beginning because that will guide you into your achievements and your failures, all of which you can use as data points to inform that direction. But you need to always come back to your why. If you're doing it just because you want to make a lot of money, you might do that. Like, I hope you do that, but that might burn you out. If you're doing it because, like, you want to prove something to someone else or, like, make your parents proud, like, you're not doing it for you. So, identify what your why is, write it down, and visualize your end goal. You can fill in the blanks. Know your why, that'll be your starting point, and then see your end point. You want to be the greatest storyteller of all time? Cool. What do you need to do to make that happen? And then go from there.
Welcome back to Swirl Radio. I'm your host, Eric.
And I'm Ayka. At Swirl Radio, we stand for those who messed up, ruined relationships,
Bombed a grade, said the wrong thing, or lost the ideal client.
overpromised and underdelivered, showed up late and missed their shot.
Today, we brought you a special guest to talk about what it takes to build something from scratch, whether it's a tech startup, a freelance business, or a career that encompasses all your interests.
Because behind every success story is a trail of failed ventures, pricing mistakes, and moments where you almost gave up on the vision.
We're excited to welcome award-winning content strategist, certified yoga instructor, and entrepreneur who's helped brands like Disney, Travel and Leisure, Hilton tell their stories. Welcome, Melody Beuzelin. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Well, I'm so glad to be here. And by the way, that intro music was bomb. Amazing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, that was a pretty all-star intro. Anything to add? Yeah, content strategy is the name of the game. Writing is the core of my passion for everything. That's kind of been the common thread throughout my career. So you'll see probably a lot of trends in that in the conversation. But yeah, other than that, the latest venture is podcasting myself. I host a podcast for creative misfits in the professional world called Jeans of the Blazer. That's just a little about me.
Awesome.
Awesome. So before we get into everything, I always have to ask everyone that's comes onto our show here. We have to market ourselves in like totally different ways. But one of the main platforms we market ourselves on as professionals is LinkedIn. So here's my question. If LinkedIn disappeared tomorrow and we all had to reintroduce ourselves without the titles, without the resumes, I would love to know, what would you lead with? And also, what would you want to know about someone else?
Wow. Okay. So I would say, hi, I'm Mel. Nice to meet you. I am a storyteller. I use words, video, and conversation to help people see things differently and remind them what's possible. And as far as what I would want to know, I would want to know what sets your soul on fire. What are you super passionate about?
I feel like what I'm passionate about changes every day. Like
It tells
fluctuates.
such a bigger story than like, what do you do for a living or like, where are you from? So I love to get right in there, ask the hard questions, trauma
Like, what
bond
do
a
you
little
care
bit.
about? Yeah. Trauma bonding. I have some questions about trauma bonding. We'll get there later. So let's kind of go back in history because we like to do that. You've described yourself as a poetry writing theater kid growing up. What
Yes.
did creativity mean to you back then, and what were you doing?
Yeah, well, so English isn't my first language. I moved to the States when I was very little, and I had a lot of trouble just acclimating and really communicating to anyone that wasn't my immediate parents or siblings. So, because of that, I feel that I've always lived sort of in my own inner world. And when I learned how to read and like communicate just as a human, it felt like it was someone just like handing me the keys to an even bigger world. And it gave me permission to just explore beyond myself. And that, in addition to just having a really active imagination as a kid, I love finding different ways to express myself through theater as I got older, and just always writing stories, creating characters, doing skits with my friends, writing in my journal. And today I'm still writing, whether that's in my work or through script writing on my podcast, writing, creating, building.
What was
Awesome.
your first kind of writing? What kind of writing did you like early on?
I can tell you the first thing I ever wrote when I learned how to write, it was in kindergarten, and it was called Snippy the Black Kitten.
Wow, you remember that?
I do.
Wow,
I have
that's
a for
cool.
because I moved so young from another country, I moved from France. I have a very strong memory of those, like, few years when I moved because everything was so different, and I think you're just like a
Right.
sponge at that age. So yeah, Snippy the Black Kitten was
Definitely.
about a little black cat that belonged to a witch, and she got lost, and she got found. It's like 5 pages long of, like, 1 sentence
Yeah.
on each page. Award winning, clearly.
Right. I mean, it sounds like something very fun to read. Then that takes me here because I hear you have this philosophy that it's not a party unless your hands are in the air. So
That's right.
I'm just curious, where did that come from? And how has that playfulness shaped your career just moving forward?
Well, I think there's something really special about having this sense of wonder. You see it when you watch a show that you really like or a movie that really moves you. And I think something that really taps into something that keeps us just like youthful and vibrant and energetic is this kind of playfulness that we have. And I feel like we can tend to lose that as we grow up and become an adult. And just by having that kind of fun approach to life and everything you do, be it work or something as simple as doing laundry, like you can make anything fun. Like whatever you do in life, find a way to make it fun. And yeah, it's not a party without both hands in the air. Just pay homage to that like unbridled sense of freedom and just fun that we get so much out of life just by living in it.
I
Right.
love that. It's funny, Eric and I, we just got back from Brussels. My old French boss, he had his anniversary and like people don't judge each other. They just dance and they don't care. I feel like in the States, it's a little bit more judgy, like if you dance, you got to dance. Or if you don't dance, just go against the wall. I felt like in Brussels, it was a little more lax. Like,
Listen,
Yeah.
I will tell you, there are no more judgmental people than the French. We will judge everything you do. I feel like there's like the
really?
dynamic
Oh,
where it's like, oh,
wow.
we freedom, like cigarettes and wine and croissant, but like low key, French people are always judging.
Really? Well, Russians are kind of similar. That's crazy. So when they're dancing, they're judging?
Maybe not when they're dancing. No, that's when they have
Okay.
both hands in the air.
Okay, okay. There it
The
is.
only
That's
time. Next, the other
okay.
times is just like smoking. Like, what are you wearing? No.
That's funny. Did you feel like a release from that when you came to the States, or was it
Oh
just as
gosh, no,
busy?
I was so young. I mean, I grew up in a European household. So my dad's French, mother's German. Don't ask me how that worked. It just did. But I feel like I have that kind of strange dynamic where in the US, I grew up also on a barrier island where everyone was tan and surfed. I surfed,
Oh.
but I am clearly not tan. So I feel like on my barrier island, I was like kind of like that weird, like exotic, but not in like a cool way. Just kind of like, why don't you have any, suntan or melanin on your
Oh,
skin?
yeah. I can
Whereas
relate.
like, so I have like that kind of dynamic. And then with my European family, I'm so American to them. So I feel like we mentioned offline, like identity crisis and kind of going through that. I feel like my whole life has been like, well, am I European or am I American? Am I a hybrid of the two? We don't know.
Oh, that's so interesting. I was curious, when did you realize that storytelling, you could make a living off of it?
Ooh, I feel like having immigrant parents, there is this idea of the American dream, but there's two sides of it that I saw. German mom, she was very by the book, encouraged you to go to school, get good grades, get a job, get a house, the whole nine. My father, on the other hand, is a French artist, and he, saw the American dream as like this oyster where you can make anything happen if you believe in it. So I've always identified with an artist's path, but I knew I wanted to be really successful in it. And I didn't quite know how yet. So film school was appealing, but out of the question at the time because I graduated high school 2 years after the recession. So it was like this fear of
Mm,
like, oh my God, there's nothing stable available and paying on for college on my own I that was way too expensive for me at the time.
right.
And I could also be like a novelist because writing was a passion of mine. But then, going to school to get an education for that, I felt like I needed to go to school to get something quote unquote secure.
Right.
But then I discovered a little show called Mad Men
Oh,
about,
Mad Men,
the
yeah.
group of ad agency folks in the 1960s. And it focused on Don Draper, who, despite a very questionable moral compass, he was this creative director at this ad
Mhm.
agency, Sterling Cooper, where, he was the creative guy, but also really, really successful and respected. And I was like, oh my God, that's someone's job where you can write, like, you can think of something, write it, and then it appears in a magazine or a billboard in Times Square. And amazing. That felt like the happy medium between creativity and stability.
Right.
Interesting. You said successful. I just wanted to go back to what you said. You said it twice, the word successful. And that's
Mhm.
something a lot of just a lot of people in general, when they're transitioning, they feel like they're kind of trying to attain that whatever. What would you, sorry, we'll delete that. I just want to ask you, you mentioned successful a couple times. What does that mean to you? And has that definition changed?
Wow, yes. I used to think being successful was being a billionaire and like FaceTiming my
Mhm.
friends from my yacht in the Caribbean while my helicopter lands on my helipad. That was like, I've made it. Of course, those are grand dreams, and let's still manifest that, sure.
Mhm.
But I think growing older, the definition of success is less about money and monetary financial things. Money doesn't make you happier. It does solve a lot of problems and can make your life more comfortable in a way that, there's some things that I didn't have comforts growing up. Um, but then also having freedom. Success to me now is being financially stable and secure, but also
Mhm.
having that freedom to actually enjoy and live life. I feel like as creatives, we can work ourselves to the bone, and kind of forget that. I've definitely been there. So, yeah, success is security and freedom.
Let's kind of go to more on the professional side of things. Your career has taken you from PR internships to travel and leisure to Disney to Hilton to now SHRM plus entrepreneurship in between, right? How do you
Totally.
think about these pivots? Were they intentional or survival?
They were definitely a little bit of both. I think it sounds
Mhm.
very romantic to say that, I had the whole thing planned out, but as we know, spoiler alert, like, it doesn't work out that way. But what I did know is that my end goal was to be a dynamic storyteller in a variety of mediums, to be really good at it, and build something meaningful. Those 3 things. And since writing has been, my passion and my North Star, it's ultimately landed all of these opportunities, which exposed me to these different skill sets. And here's kind of what I mean by that. For the PR internship, I wrote press releases, and managed client social strategy. And then at Travel and Leisure, I wrote for print and digital magazines and e-newsletters and did multi-content strategy. And then I worked for a yoga wellness startup where I launched brands in the e-commerce space. I learned SEO, product development, started a YouTube channel, had a lot of freedom there. And then I launched my content creation business on the side, blah, 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 blah. I could go on, but you get the point. Um, and basically, what I built there just allowed me to find more full time work. As I lost one of my full time jobs in between there, moved to California. But that led me to meet another business partner and start, a wellness booking app. So all of these things definitely were not intentional. Some moves were survival, taking jobs that necessarily weren't aligned with me, but then pursuing things that did and just failing forward.
Oh,
And do
wow.
you read a lot? Like, cause it sounds like you have to really be good at storytelling. And I'm assuming you read a lot, right? Or no?
The moment I learned how to read, like that, I was such a book nerd, and I try to
Okay.
read like at least 5 books at a time because like I am a glutton for knowledge and words. I mean, I think words are the sexiest dance that we have, and the most beautiful way that we can express ourselves. So yes, the more words, the better.
I love
Cool.
that.
I wanted to go back to, all the different jobs and different things that you got into. And a lot of the things that we do, of course, some things work out, some things don't. So I want to get into that. So can you give me like a job or a chapter in your life where things didn't go exactly the way you wanted? And what did that teach you?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I thought that I was living that American dream when I got my first corporate job out of college. It was at Travel and Leisure, which was formerly Wyndham Worldwide at the time before it was acquired. And after I spent a few years just kind of honing my skills as a copywriter and in the editorial department, I thought I was, I thought I was moving up to Don Draper from Mad Men status, where like, it was just mere minutes before I was CEO running the place, Don Draper of of that world. And what I realized is that corporate America was burning me out so fast. The candle was burning
Mm,
from both ends, and I enjoyed the people that I worked with and the work that I did, but I had this really strong pull to build something rather than being part of this, corporate machine. And I really wanted to expand my skill set. So
Mhm.
I took a really, really big chance on myself and I jumped from a very stable, secure job from being in a department of, 70 people in marketing alone to being employee number 2 at a yoga startup where for 3 years I built so much and I thought that was endgame. And then as the nature of startups happen, it folded and I thought like my world was crashing down like, oh no, I'm
right.
going to be homeless. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm not going to be able to find a stable job or do anything. And, you know, I thought because I left a stable job for something that didn't work out, I failed. But at that point, I had marketable skills. It let me lean into the business that I had created to help me support myself while I continued to look for work. And it opened up opportunities that I may not have had if I had stayed in my comfy corporate job. So,
Right.
long story long, it basically taught me to be so resilient to failure and that failure is just a data point, right? So all you have to do
Definitely.
is just trust the ground is going to be beneath your feet when you take that step. You just have to take that step forward.
Your dad passed away, right? When
Yes, yes. He passed away when I was
Ye
2 months before my ninth birthday.
yeah, I kind of wanted to touch on that because I feel like when your parent leaves you, especially probably that early, it probably affects you every single point in your life, and I was
Absolutely.
curious, when was your dad with you, and how did that affect your journey a little bit there?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I feel like I really started right because being so young, losing him, at 8 years old, you don't really know how to process that grief and pain when you're that little. So the
Right.
only way I knew how to do that was to write. So that's when I, really picked up a pen and I started to actually use writing as a way to express my feelings. And that has been kind of the common thread of like, that is my why, of just being able to express yourself in such an authentic way and really lay your cards out there, because, through that pain and through that trauma comes some really powerful things, and I think that really kind of, like, locked in just my creative path from there of, like, everything I do, it has to have meaning behind it. It has to be fully immersed 110% authentically myself. And that's kind of what I inject into my work that I believe, makes it impactful and meaningful and different than, sterile, corporate jargon or whatnot that you might see.
I love
Well,
that. I love that.
I want to get back to something you said. You said you're committed to disrupting business as usual. So, what does that mean to you? And where did that drive come from?
Yeah. So ultimately, I think that comes from the idea of just being uncomfortable with the idea of comfort and constantly challenging the status quo. So, for example, the Wright brothers, they were told that human flight was impossible. Like, we have cars, we've already come so far.
Right.
Like, why do we need to go in the air? And then in 1903, they flew their first airplane. So, what people will tell you every single day is that something is impossible from the moment you're little. Like, "No, you can't grow up and be a a dinosaur, how dare you?" But, from being young to the professional world, people will tell you that things can't happen, and you can choose to believe them and fall in line, but you can also commit to innovation, and even though it might be hard, the things worth building rarely come without any resistance. So yeah, constantly work to be uncomfortable is my MO.
On your journey as someone who's actually parents grew up somewhere else and kind of you being in that middle, how did you kind of develop your identity? How did your heritage influence the way you presented yourself? Did you feel like you reconnected with it? Because you don't sound like you're French. You sound like you're an American girl, you know?
Well, like, the only perception of college I had was from, like movies and, where just debauchery happens left and right, and I was like, "Ooh, I feel like I need this kind of American experience," and I always felt like entering college and entering the professional world, I always felt like a little kid when they're, wearing their mom's high heels, just, walking around pretending to be an adult. I can see myself just on the outside of myself having conversations. Like, my first interview, I was so nervous, my chin was shaking like a little billy goat, and I just was, standing outside of my body like, "Oh my god, look at her having a professional conversation and doing her best." So I think I've done my best to step into, that role of what's expected, like, how you present yourself, but then, behind the scenes where I can be creative and kind of, slip in, I don't know, that the artistry and the work, that's where that shows up the most.
Let's jump into your entrepreneurship journey. You co-founded True Healers, wellness booking app. What was the origin story? What problem were you trying to solve?
The actual idea came from the beautiful brains of my business partners, Caitlin Malloy and Jackie Rowe, and they're the start of their idea came from the idea of creating a community and a marketplace platform that was basically like Uber, but for holistic healing services. So you could book anything from a massage therapist to tarot readers and astrology to either come to your house in person, or do, for the most part, virtually. And I came in with the marketing, UX, branding, and business knowledge to bring it to life. Like, okay, we have this idea, like, now what? So the three of us banded together. And how that kind of started was very serendipitous. I actually interviewed to be a yoga teacher on the platform. It was 2020. I had moved to California, and I had lost my job through COVID, my full-time job. I was growing my side business. And I was like, let me take a step back from, the hustle, and let me just go back to my roots of just teaching yoga, something that I had gotten my certification in just a few years prior. And
Right.
so I went to interview. I think they barely had like a website up at that point, but they just knew that they needed people. And they saw my marketing background and they're like, "Hey, do you want to be a part of this and help make it happen?" So together, we built and we launched this app with more than 100 or so different healers and 15 different modalities that we hand interviewed, hand selected, and built this thing that seemed so inconceivable at the time. It was wild.
Can you give me like a really kind of basic recap of what that process was? Because, launching, like research, marketing, that is a lot of work. Where do you start? Where did you start? Can you walk through the timeline a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So it starts with identifying a problem in the market, right? And so for Jackie and Caitlin, they were massage therapists, and what they saw on their end is there would be new massage therapists getting their massage therapy license and giving massages for like $15, trying to build their book of business, things like that. And so they had the idea of creating this platform that paid healers fairly and then making different healing modalities accessible. Like, you hear a friend got a tarot reading, like, "Oh, that sounds really cool," but like, where do I even go to find a tarot reader? Like, you go on Craigslist and maybe you get scammed. So there's this like distrust in like the kind of spirituality industry. And so the goal of True Healers was to create that sense of trust with the user and treat healers fairly with fair pay. So it just kind of covered both bases. So identifying that kind of gap in the market. Then it was, coming up with the name. They came up with the name. I helped build their entire brand with like the ethos of like, who's our target audience, who do we want to speak to, what are their exact demographics, and what are the services that we believe they would offer. That comes with like market research, and seeing like what people are interested in, doing some like search, like grassroots search on Reddit, going through like Facebook groups, like literally asking people, and building that business plan around those user personas and like target revenue, things like that. And then you have to design the MVP. It started as a website that we turned into an app. And that whole user experience, I designed from start to finish of like, how do we want people to experience this? We want it to be seamless, easy, clean, and affordable. So, yeah, started with the problem, then the audience, then building the brand around the ethos and the values that we believed in, and then creating the framework for the app and then building the content around that because ultimately the storytelling is what helped bring that to life aside from like the technical side is we really wanted to focus on community. So that was one of our big values. So knowing that my background in social media and marketing, like building the storytelling around community and education and inspiration was a huge part of that. And then it was launch time.
You never know how much work it takes until you do it
Ooh.
yourself.
I mean, I gave the abridged Spark Notes version, but I know you guys know, I know the audience knows it is so much more. It is the tip of the iceberg.
What happened after? What made you leave?
Totally. What a juicy question. I love this. So, for the first 2 years, we were bootstrapping everything. Literally, we would go to trade shows. We had like a booth set up where we would tell people about our product. We had collateral made with like pamphlets, things like that. After we had all the healers onboarded, and just doing literally marketing everything ourselves with little budget. I mean, when I say little, I mean like maybe like $5,000 like for some social media ads and whatever it took to run the website and stuff. So we were grassroots everything. And then we finally got investor interest. And to anyone
Mm.
considering investors in your project, let me just say read your term sheet very carefully because while that big check, it might be very, very tempting, but you might also be giving up more than you realize. So
Mhm.
ultimately, with more decision makers involved, the company started to go in a different direction that didn't feel aligned with what the three of us had originally came up with. So we're still
Mhm.
owners of the company, but we just no longer have any officer positions and aren't involved in the greater operations.
How did that make you feel at the time?
Oof. Listen, I don't wanna disrespect parents out there, but this is the closest thing I had to having a baby and just kind of seeing that go not in the way that we wanted and feeling like, oh, feeling like grieving the loss of what we originally had planned, was so hard. It felt like losing a limb. I'll say that. Keep it PC.
Well, in your journey, you've launched 4 best-selling Amazon brands. Like, how do you think about side projects versus main projects? And also, when does the side project deserve your full attention?
So, with having a side hustle, I mean, all the side hustles I've done in the past while working full time, I mean, um, we have more resources now than ever to make it our main hustle if we want, like with technology and AI, things like that. Sometimes that side hustle stays as a passion project, and I think that can be okay too. On the other side of that, you can still work your full time job while building your side hustle. I feel like there's this idea that we have to go all in or nothing and take this big leap. And while I feel like you don't have to have everything planned out, but you also don't have to take that leap. And nothing kills creativity more than being worried about if you can, the lights are going to turn off the next
Right.
day. And then I think when it becomes your main hustle, it's when you're ready to scale it. You do have to make a decision. Just if you see your side hustle growing, you're like, oh my God, like this is starting to pay my bills. You could keep working that. Eventually, that's going to burn you out. So you do eventually
Mhm.
have to choose to give a little bit. Otherwise, it's at the cost of your mental health. But
Right.
having a plan and like a savings to fall back on, if you do commit to your side hustle, I think is super super important and something that a lot of people don't talk about because it does sound romantic and sexy to be like, no, I'm gonna go all in and I have $10 in my bank account, and it's like, oof, like in this economy, like just I don't know about all that. It sounds nice, but I feel like giving yourself the freedom to operate in your genius zone by having that security just on the back burner to fall back on, even if it's like, okay, I have savings to get me through these next 3 months. If they don't work out, then okay, maybe I go back full time and I pivot that dream or I build that back up again and approach it stronger next time.
So, just being an entrepreneur in general, what do you wished you've known about entrepreneurship before you jumped in it?
It is 10% glamorous and 90% hustle. I feel like it's
Definitely.
fun to post like right? Like, it's so fun to post like working from a cool location or like the events that you might get to go to network. But then like 90% of the time I'm literally like 90% dry shampoo and just like a little shadow gremlin just in my room, just building and creating and writing and getting stuff approved, things like that. So, yeah, the Instagram is absolutely not reality, but and I
Right.
think that's why a lot of people too uh the idea of entrepreneurship sounds great because the freedom is amazing and you can absolutely get there, but it is work and it is so much more work than putting in a 9 to 5. There is nothing wrong with just like having that day job and getting that consistent paycheck and then
Right.
working on your side hustle until you're ready to grow it. But then when you're ready to commit, go for it.
Yeah, definitely. That's one thing I do see nowadays. Like people see the glamorous side, the Instagram side. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we're doing this and that. But I think people avoid the reality of looking into what it really takes. They
It's
avoid that part.
hard.
Even the
Yeah.
younger generation is like, oh, I want to do X, Y, and Z because I see this person, but they fail to see the small details of all the work that you put in to get there. But then also I do blame some entrepreneurs because we fail to show the work that we put
Yes.
in to get there. So,
Yeah,
it can go both ways.
exactly.
Instagram, man, it's been a rock in my shoe. I freaking hate it. And I'm sure I'm not the only one listening to this podcast that feels the same way.
Yeah, I feel like there's this idea that you want to tell the entire world what you're doing because like you feel like okay, you need to speak it into existence and you're proud of this thing that you're going to create that right now is just an idea, but it could be something great. I think it's a lot cooler to move in complete silence in the background and then just come out like she just, fell off the planet for a year. Where did she go? And all of a sudden she has this business. You don't have to be having millions of dollars of revenue a year, but then you just come out with this new thing that you've created and that's your milestone. I feel like that takes a lot more pressure off to perform and lets you focus on what's actually important, which is building your business.
Oh my God, I love that. People are like, be like Steve Jobs and say the idea before. That's very inspiring. I appreciate it.
Like write it in your journal, like put it on your vision board, like tell the people who love you and will reflect that energy back at you. But I feel like when you say it out to the world, there's going to be people who are envious or resentful of like your drive and your energy. And like you don't need that kind of energy in what you're trying to build. No, just come at them out of nowhere and you're already on top.
Now let's talk a little bit about wellness because I think that that's a huge part of your story. You are a
Yes.
300-hour certified yoga instructor. How did yoga become so central in your life?
Yeah, so 300 plus hour certified in vinyasa yoga with a specialty in trauma informed. And basically what I wanted to accomplish by getting that is I had this goal and I don't really know where it came from. Yoga has always been like something I did for fitness. And then I'm like, I really want to get my yoga teaching certification. Didn't really know why. I feel like I like the idea of it. Instagram. This is like 2016 when it was like Instagram was all like backbending yogis and acai bowls under waterfalls. So I'm like, oh, I really
Right.
want to do that for like the fitness part of it. And around that same time, I joined the startup for the yoga wellness company. It was wore a lot of hats, but technically like the editor of the blog portion of it, and all of the copy and writing that went into it. And I realized as I was working with freelancers and editing the copy, I was like, I don't know what half of this stuff means. Like, what are chakras? Like, what is all this? So
Yeah.
I did what any I think reasonable person would do is I jumped into a 10-month intensive yoga teacher
Wow.
training program to learn the craft, partly because I wanted to do it, but mostly because I wanted to understand my job a little better. And I fell in love with it because what I learned is the physical part is just probably the most insignificant piece of it. It's how you show up just mentally, emotionally, spiritually for yourself, and more importantly for others, because the first thing like I learned on day 1 was guess what, babe? It's not about you. It's about the people coming in. If you're teaching in a studio or wherever, it's about can you give something to people who are coming through your door needing something specific? They could be going through a divorce, they could have lost someone. You need to be able to show up and give them that space to exist in freely.
So you spent those 300 plus hours, and then you also created and starred in about, I think it's over 24 plus yoga videos.
Yeah.
What was that like being in front of the camera after all the years behind the scenes, just creating, content for others?
I mean, it tapped into my just theater kid soul. I was like, "Oh, I have a stage now. I can do this and get paid for it." Like
Right.
that was such a trip because like writing the scripts was cool and basically how that was even possible. The startup itself, it started out with 2, 3 people and then it grew with our core people, maybe like 5, but it was literally in like a glass incubator. Like if you've seen like Silicon Valley, just like the in the startup zone where
Oh,
they're
yeah.
in this like glass room away from everyone else. That was literally us with like whiteboard walls. Like it was so just like startup coded, but the founder, he owned other companies that were in the e-commerce space, so we were able to use those resources for like the graphic designers
Hmm.
and the IT, and they had a whole videography team to like shoot products. And this videographer was like an Emmy award winning, he shot for like Disney, Animal Kingdom and stuff, and I'm like, John, like we need to leverage your talents. Like let's make videos. I feel like this will be an effective way to we're going in that direction with video. So I wrote scripts and like I was in yoga teacher training, so I like hired all my friends who were yoga teachers to be in my
Oh,
videos, and
cool.
then
Yeah.
it was so much fun. And then I was like, well, I have an idea for something. Like let me do it. So it was just tapping back into my theater kid roots where it was fun. It was just another form of expression, just words just on the outside of me.
Along that line, I was curious, how does your wellness practice inform how you show up in your podcast or sort of in other projects? And how do you protect your own energy while producing so much for other people?
Protecting your energy is such a big part of it. I think intention is always the north star there of like why are you doing this and what are you trying to communicate? And even though I don't teach in studios anymore, it's been a long time. I still say that I teach every day in how I interact with others and just how you communicate and how you show up for others. So I think that's just a common thread in everything I do. They call it yoga practice, not yoga perfect for a reason, right?
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
always going to be a work in progress. I feel like it's so easy, especially just as a creative, to put yourself all in and lose yourself a little bit. But then having that discernment to be able to pull back and be like, okay, what's right for me? Let me check in with Yoga Mel. Like, how is she doing right now? Like, are we okay? And it just kind of takes over from there. But yeah, always a work in progress.
Well, I have a close friend in London. She's actually from India and she always laughs at like American style yoga, I guess. I could never get her to come to a class with me. And she doesn't really explain why, but I think it's because it feels a little gimmicky, maybe. She's like, it's about the breath, And then, and we're here saying like namaste and all this stuff. I was curious if you had any opinion on that or any experience kind of doing yoga abroad anywhere.
I could talk about that just so I think yoga is for sure Americanized. It was brought from India by Indra Devi in the 1950s, who Marilyn Monroe was actually one of her students. She taught yoga to the
Oh,
stars. So
really?
that's kind of how it kind of made its way into the US. And it was very much like yoga, like if you in Sanskrit is like it means like yoke to come together. And so it's about the coming together within yourself to reach your higher form of yourself, your higher power, whatever you belief you subscribe to, like connectedness. That's ultimately the goal. And I think in, the US, we've kind of made it very much about like fitness and aesthetics and all that.
Yeah.
When really, I mean, I think I think there's a sacredness to the ancient practice. It's like a 15,000-year-old practice. So being able to acknowledge, like, the Sanskrit terms of the poses and the chakras, if you're into that. I mean, I've taught corporate yoga too, where like they're not really aligned with that. So it's kind of like reading the room a little bit and knowing what people are going to be receptive to. But my theory on that is, I mean, I've seen things like chicken nugget yoga and like beer yoga, where you go to a yoga class at a brewery, get a beer afterwards. And my theory behind that is if it gets you through the door to take a yoga class, congratulations, like you've done your job. Whether that person chooses to stick with it or they're just there for the beer, who cares? They're having that moment to be in that
Yeah.
space. And then, quick story for yoga abroad, I went to a yoga class in Amsterdam with my friend when we were doing our trauma informed continuing education. And we went to a yoga class, and of course, like, typical Americans, like, oh yeah, we're going to go to a yoga class, and not thinking that, in Amsterdam, they speak Dutch. And we didn't think that the class would be in Dutch. But at the start of the class, the teacher, I guess she heard us when we were checking in at the front, and she's like, we have, it sounds like we have two American students today. So we're actually going to conduct the class in English. And I was just like, in America, we'd never do that. It was the kindest thing I have
Yeah.
ever seen. And like, and her English was, it was good, but it was definitely like a little broken. And all the students were like, yeah, like we're here for this. It was so cool. Shout out to
Yeah.
the Dutch. They're amazing.
That
Yeah,
is
that would
cool.
not happen here, but I think it
Yeah.
wouldn't happen here because we don't speak any other languages, which is terrible. We
Yeah.
just yeah, and we're proud of it too. We're like, "We only speak English." Yes, we do.
Right. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of the yoga is, you want to center yourself. It also helps like mental health and a lot of things like that. So I know now you write about the workplace, mental health and burnout for SHRM. Is that like Society of like Human Resource Management or something like that stand for?
Yes, the Society of Human Resource Management. I feel like I need to
Okay.
say it
Okay.
like
Yes.
they offer resources for HR professionals and business professionals as well. Oh, and they do courses too for things like, it seems so out of left field from everything I've done, but I think that speaks to the idea that, like, with a core set of skills in like writing, it doesn't matter if you're selling a cheeseburger, a business class, an exotic vacation, or a course on how to do people analytics. It's about the why and how you're showing up. So yes, just another another facet of
Awesome.
that.
So I want to pivot to more of the business creativity side, right? So you run Fast and Savage as a content creation business. How do you find clients for one? Has that changed over the years from then to now?
Oh, good question. Okay, so finding clients, I'm not going to gatekeep a single thing. I will say the majority of my work has come from referrals. And where that kind of originated is my very first client. The reason I started my content creation agency is because when I left my first corporate job to work at the yoga startup, my old editor reached out to me, and she said, "Hey Mel, like we really loved the work that you did, and we're actually looking for some freelance writers. Would you be interested in writing freelance for us?" And I was like, oh my God, yeah, like absolutely. And so I've Googled like having an LLC and tax write offs, like, like starting a business 101 basically. And that was my first client. My original like full time gig was my very first client. Once you have one good piece, and it's like network the absolute shit out of yourself to prove that you can do something. All you really need is one piece of good work, because that work will speak for itself to your client. And then like broadcast that you've done this work, because another thing too that's gotten me clients is being vocal about what I've done, having my portfolio online. I've had people contact me just out of the blue from my LinkedIn, from things that I post, and they're like, "Hey, I need help with this," and over time, your reputation, it speaks for itself. But what the advice I would say to someone trying to get started is, well, it's a mad world out there to hustle, but I would say like there's resources like Fiverr where you can set your rates probably lower than you deserve, but just to kind of get your name out there and get, again, that one client, because there are also clients that are just like surfing those boards looking for not just a one-time project, but someone to work with consistently, and they just don't know how to find the right person. So giving yourself the best possible, most exposure you can for the most possibilities of getting those opportunities. Get one, nail it. Don't be late on those deadlines, like over deliver, and like you will see what it does for you. And to be clear, it took me 7 years to really build up that client base. So it took me time. It might take others more if they just went into it full time, but I worked full time while building it. And over the years, that work has spoken for itself.
See, okay. So that you said 7 years to really build that out. So
Mm-hmm.
you got a lot of experience. And so there's a lot of up and downs there. So what
Sure.
what did you have to learn the hard way about client management in general?
Oh, you want to give so much of yourself because you're so excited to feel chosen, like, "Oh my god, they want to use me for my work and they're paying me for it." You feel like like, discovered the secret to fire or something, like,
Mhm.
amazing. So, I feel like it can be really easy to overextend yourself and burn yourself out, and I think having those boundaries, Yoga Mel checking in, be sure to set those boundaries as early on as you can, because once you work with the client long enough, they kind of have these expectations. And if you don't have those boundaries first and foremost, then it can really get away from you.
What kept you up at night mostly throughout this whole journey, the 7 years? Because you seem very together and it's bothering me, like, there's, like
I
like
go, we're not gatekeeping at all. There have been moments where I have absolutely overextended myself where like I took on a project last year, for example, where I had to hire an assistant for the first time because I was like, okay, I could do all of this myself, but over the course of 3 months, I will probably get a total of 10 hours of sleep total. Or I could have a little bit less of revenue and have some help and know that that work is going to be up to the quality up to par that I know I would have it because I trusted this person. She was actually working for us for our app for True Healers. So I knew her and I was like, I'd love to work with you again. And so that experience really kept me up at night because I was like, first of all, oh shit, how am I going to do this? Second of all, like wrestling with the idea of like, after this project is over, like, that was a really big one. Are there going to be more big projects that come in? So there are so many things that keep me up at night. I don't sleep as much as I should. I wish I could be one of those people that like gets 8 hours and just feels refreshed, but no, I rarely sleep. Working on that.
And do you still have time to read or you don't read anymore?
I make time to read. I read and I write every day. That's a non-negotiable for sure. And it's hard. Some days I don't want to, but I force myself to.
All right. So I ask everyone that come here, just a real specific situation. So if you were sitting across from a creative who feels stuck, maybe between jobs, unsure about what direction to go, what advice would you give them? What would you want to tell them?
Oh, that's such a good one. Okay. Let me think about this for a second. I would say identify what your why is from the very beginning because that will guide you into your achievements and your failures, all of which you can use as data points to inform that direction. But you need to always come back to your why. If you're doing it just because you want to make a lot of money, you might do that. Like, I hope you do that, but that might burn you out. If you're doing it because, like, you want to prove something to someone else or, like, make your parents proud, like, you're not doing it for you. So, identify what your why is, write it down, and visualize your end goal. You can fill in the blanks. Know your why, that'll be your starting point, and then see your end point. You wanna be the greatest storyteller of all time? Cool. What do you need to do to make that happen? And then go from there.
What's a good definition of your why? Because I think that this term has been used a lot, especially with coaching. And I've noticed that maybe it's not clear. So if you had to give an example of a good why, and we got the bad why, right? Like the making as much money as possible, but what's like a solid why and how do you find that why?
I mean, I could tell you my why. which is to create a sense of wonder and curiosity to inspire the world around me. Because that comes from a deep sense of play, a sense of fun, and curiosity moves you forward. How to figure that out is, I would say, think about what means the most to you. Like what are some of the things that like you envision yourself in the future? Who is that person? Where are they? What are they doing? What's important to them then? Because it might be different from now. You might have this goal of achieving something in the future, but if you know what that looks like, or you have like just a framework, then that's a great starting point.
In closing, I'd love to get your final reflections and anything you would like the listeners to know. And also, where can they find you and find your work?
Closing reflections. Yes, you can. Whatever it is, yes, you can. Don't listen to anyone else. Don't let them influence your energy. You can do this. Believe in yourself. Believe that the floor is going to be in front of you when you put your foot out. Second, where can people find me? So, my podcast is Jeans with a Blazer. I come out with new episodes every Sunday. On Instagram, it's Jeans with a Blazer. And my personal Instagram is Mel Bose, MELBEUZ. That's been an
Awesome.
awesome conversation, you guys.
Melly, I really appreciate you meeting with us and taking the time, answer all these questions.
Oh, we love it. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been such a pleasure.